You spent 12 years inside rooms built to shape your mind, your habits, your schedule, your obedience. You learned dates, formulas, grammar, and rules. You learned how to raise your hand. You learned how to sit still. You learned how to pass tests. Not one real lesson on how money works. Not one clear explanation of assets, debt, cash flow, ownership, compounding, or wealth. That was not an accident. The people who designed that system understood money perfectly. They understood power. They understood dependence. They understood that a person who only knows how to earn will spend a lifetime serving people who know how to own. The truth is, you were taught to chase income and ignore accumulation. You were trained to labor, not to build, to perform, not to possess. This audiobook contains what the classroom was never built to give you. 7 wealth principles that change how you see money from this moment forward. Chapter 1. The first theft. The first thing taken from you was not money. It was attention. It was direction. It was the chance to ask the right question before your life hardened around the wrong answers. You were young when the training started. Show up on time. Follow instructions. Complete the assignment. Wait for approval. Ask for permission. Compete for grades. Compete for praise. Compete for a seat at the table someone else built. By the time money entered your life, the frame was already installed. You were prepared to work for it. You were not prepared to study it. That is the theft. Nobody needed to lie to you directly. All they had to do was leave out the parts that mattered most. If a child learns how to solve for X, but never learns how interest works, what debt does, what inflation steals, what ownership pays, then that child does not enter adult life educated. That child enters adult life useful. Pause here. Useful is not the same as free. Busy is not the same as secure. The truth is, most people never notice the setup because it looks normal. Everybody around them follows the same script. Finish school, find work, earn more, spend more, borrow when necessary, repeat. The pain builds slowly enough to feel personal. When the paycheck vanishes too fast, you blame yourself. When savings refuse to grow, you blame discipline. When retirement feels distant and thin, you blame time. You rarely blame the missing education that made the pattern almost inevitable. That is how control works when it is polished. It does not scream, it blends in. You were taught history, but not the history of currency losing value. You were taught mathematics, but not how compounding rewards patience and punishes delay. You were taught language, but not how contracts, taxes and debt terms shape a life more than clever speech ever will. You were taught science, but not the human science of status, impulse, envy, fear, and the way those forces empty a bank account faster than any bill. What kind of education teaches effort but not allocation, activity but not ownership, compliance but not independence? The answer is uncomfortable because it strips away innocence. A system built to produce dependable workers has no urgent reason to produce financially literate owners. A person who understands wealth thinks differently. A person who thinks differently cannot be managed as easily. That person asks why the monthly payment is praised more than the purchase price. That person asks why a salary increase feels smaller every year. That person asks why the house, the car, the degree, and the image keep getting more expensive, while peace keeps getting rarer. Stop again. Look at the adults you saw growing up. Many worked hard, many were decent, many were tired. Hard work was there, character was there, sacrifice was there. Yet money still felt fragile. Why? Because effort without financial understanding becomes a treadmill with moral language wrapped around it. You feel noble while standing still. This is where most people stop. They accept the ceiling because everybody they know calls it life. But the truth is, wealth is not hidden by complexity. It is hidden by omission. The basic ideas are simple enough to explain to a teenager. Own things that pay you. Avoid debt that drains you. Save before you spend. Let time multiply what impulse wants to interrupt. Learn the rules. Stay quiet. Repeat. That is not too advanced for a classroom. It is simply too disruptive. When you finally see that, anger may rise first. Let it. Anger can be clean when it wakes you up. The danger arises when anger becomes performance rather than action. Rage at the system will not repair your future. Clarity might. Calm action will. You do not need to become bitter. You need to become exact. Money is not a moral reward for being good. It is not proof of worth. It is not a badge of intelligence by itself. Money is stored choice. That is all. It is time held in another form. It is pressure reduced before it arrives. It is the power to say no without panic. It is space around your mind. It is control. People who never learned that stay emotional around every financial decision. They earn, then react. They spend, then regret. They borrow, then rationalize. They compare, then consume. The pattern looks like freedom because purchases feel like choice. But a purchase made from pressure is not power. It is relief rented for a moment. Let that settle. A life can look respectable and still be financially cornered. A paycheck can be large and still be weak. A person can be educated and still be economically naive. The first theft was not just the missing lesson, it was the replacement lesson. You were taught that security comes from being selected by institutions. A good school selects you. A good company selects you. A lender approves you. A promotion validates you. The whole structure points your eyes upward, toward gatekeepers, while wealth quietly grows sideways through ownership, systems, and decisions made without applause. That is why so many smart people remain financially exposed. They keep upgrading credentials while neglecting the machinery of accumulation. They polish the tool and ignore the engine. And once you understand that, the next thing becomes impossible to ignore. Earning money is not the problem. The problem is the role money plays in your mind. Chapter 2: The Salary Cage. Once that frame cracks, you start to see something painful. Most people do not have a money problem. They have a role problem. They see themselves as earners first and builders never. From the beginning, you were pointed toward income as if income were the final answer. Get a stable job, get a better salary, get a raise, get another certification, get another stream of earned income. The entire culture nods along because income is visible. Income is easy to praise. Income sounds responsible at dinner tables and in job interviews. But income alone does not create wealth. It only creates possibility. What you do with your income after it arrives determines almost everything. That distinction changes a life. A salary can feed you, house you, and even impress people. It can also trap you so quietly that you mistake your cage for achievement. The higher the salary, the easier it is to decorate the cage. Better apartment, better car, better restaurants, better vacations, better clothes, better excuses. Outwardly, life expands. Inwardly, dependence deepens. Bills rise to meet earnings with perfect discipline. Status pressure does the rest. Pause here. More income without a system becomes a more expensive loop. A raise can strengthen the trap if your habits stay the same. The truth is, schools trained you for the salary cage because salaries are measurable, legible, and obedient. A job gives structure. A paycheck comes on schedule. Taxes are withheld before you touch the money. Performance is reviewed by someone else. The system likes that because predictability is easy to organize. Wealth building is different. Wealth building requires delayed gratification, private study, tolerance for uncertainty, and the willingness to look unimpressive while foundations are laid. That is why so few people do it well. Look at the typical pattern. You spend years learning to earn. Then you start earning and immediately feel behind. Rent is high, food is high, debt is waiting, social life costs money, family expectations cost money, the image of adulthood costs money. If you finally push your income upward, inflation takes a piece, taxes take another, lifestyle takes another, and emotional relief takes another. At the end of the month, there is motion but no mass. You worked, you received, you released, nothing stayed. This is where most people stop. They call it survival, and never ask why survival feels so crowded even after success. Because the issue is not just what you make, it is whether your money has any assignment beyond disappearing. Money with no assignment obeys your mood. Money guided by mood rarely survives. That is why wealthy people often sound boring when they speak honestly. They talk about margins, they talk about cash reserves, they talk about owning productive assets, they talk about tax treatment, debt cost, downside protection, and time horizons. None of that makes for glamorous conversation. But glamour does not compound. Control does. Study the difference between someone who makes money and someone who keeps it. Those are usually two different people. The salary cage also distorts identity. If all your value comes from earned income, then every threat to your job feels like a threat to your existence. A bad quarter can shake your confidence. A difficult manager can shrink your voice. A layoff can destroy your self-image. That is too much power to hand over. Income should support your life. It should not define your worth. The truth is, wealthy thinking begins when you stop asking only how much you earned and start asking what you kept, what you own, and what will still pay you when you stop moving. That question divides lives. A person trapped in salary thinking treats money like water passing through the hands. A person building wealth treats money like workers to be assigned, trained, and positioned. Every dollar gets a role. Some protect, some grow, some buy time, some purchase skill, some acquire ownership. Some remain liquid and ready. That is management. That is command. That is adulthood at a higher level. And yet most people resist this because the first stage feels slower. Cutting unnecessary spending bruises the ego. Refusing status games invites misunderstanding. Living below your means while others perform abundance can feel lonely. The world cheers visible consumption. It barely notices quiet accumulation. Let that sit. Silence is often the sound of money being built. Noise is often the sound of money being spent. You do not escape the salary cage by hating work. You escape it by changing the purpose of work. Work becomes raw material. Income becomes fuel. Skill becomes leverage. Savings become soldiers. Ownership becomes the mission. Without that shift, even ambition can betray you. You climb harder only to remain owned by the ladder. This is why the gap in your education matters so much. Nobody taught you to distinguish between income and wealth. Nobody showed you that a person can earn 6 figures and still be weak. Nobody explained that financial freedom begins as a structure, not a feeling. Once that lands, a harder question appears. If income is only the beginning, then what exactly should your money be doing while you sleep? Chapter 3. Assets, not applause. The answer starts with a brutal correction. Your money should not be sitting around waiting for your next craving. It should be acquiring assets. That word gets thrown around so casually that many people never stop to define it. An asset is not something expensive. It is not something impressive. It is not something that makes you feel successful for a weekend. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket, increases in value over time, or both. If it does neither, then no matter how polished it looks, it is not helping you build wealth. This sounds simple because it is. The difficulty is emotional, not intellectual. From an early age, you were conditioned to chase visible rewards, good grades, approval, titles, labels, brands. The same pattern follows adults into money. They buy symbols first and foundations later, if ever. A nicer car before an investment account, a bigger home before a cash reserve, better clothes before a better balance sheet. The appearance of progress becomes more important than the reality of ownership. Pause here. You can look rich and be weak. You can look ordinary and be dangerous. The first wealth principle is this: buy assets before applause. If money comes in and immediately gets redirected into things that do not produce, you remain a servant to future labor. If money comes in and begins acquiring productive things, then each month you reduce the amount of life you must sell later. Think about what that means. Every asset you own is a piece of future pressure removed, a business that generates profit, a share of a company paying earnings, a property producing cash flow, intellectual property, a skill that can scale beyond hours, a system that keeps working when you are not in the room. These are not trophies, these are engines. The truth is, wealthy people are often less attached to image than people trying to look wealthy. That surprises many because the culture teaches the opposite. But real builders understand something basic. Money spent on appearances is gone. Money spent on productive ownership can return with friends. This is where most people stop. They hear the word asset and imagine a distant, advanced version of life. They assume it requires huge income, elite access, or perfect timing. Not true. The habit begins long before the scale does. A small but consistent purchase of productive assets changes identity. It says, I do not consume every reward immediately. I recruit part of it into service. Stop again. Wealth is not what you buy. Wealth is what you own that keeps paying after the purchase. The second principle follows the first with equal force. Understand the difference between an asset and a liability, even when society praises the liability. A liability pulls money from you. It demands maintenance, interest, fees, insurance, upgrades, or attention, while giving little or nothing back. Some liabilities are necessary. Shelter matters. Transportation matters. Tools matter. But necessity does not change category. You must learn to see clearly. Clarity protects you from emotional marketing. The world is full of people trying to sell you payments disguised as identity. They sell status as self-respect. They sell debt as access. They sell upgrades as adulthood. They sell urgency because urgency weakens judgment. If you do not know how to classify what you buy, every purchase becomes vulnerable to manipulation. You do not need to become extreme. You need to become accurate. Ask better questions. Does this thing produce? Does it appreciate? Does it free up time, increase earning potential, or reduce future costs in a measurable way? Or does it simply decorate the version of me I want others to see? There is your answer. A lot of pain enters life through confusion between lifestyle and wealth. Lifestyle is what money lets you display. Wealth is what money lets you endure. Lifestyle is visible. Wealth is structural. Lifestyle speaks quickly. Wealth moves quietly. Let that settle. The more a purchase needs an audience, the less likely it is to be an asset. Real strength rarely begs to be seen. You may have heard people say that money is just a tool. That is true, but incomplete. A tool still requires a hand with discipline. Without discipline, money amplifies weakness. With discipline, money becomes a quiet army. The first soldiers in that army are assets. They work long after motivation fades. They do not care about your mood. They do not need applause. They simply do their job if you have the patience to keep assigning them correctly. That patience is difficult in a culture built on immediate reward. Social media trains envy. Advertising trains dissatisfaction. Debt trains impatience. Formal education trains compliance. None of those forces train ownership. Ownership must be chosen on purpose, and once you start choosing it, something changes in the room. You begin to see how often people confuse expense with progress. You start to hear the insecurity in casual spending. You stop admiring every display. You become harder to impress and harder to manipulate. That is power. When a paycheck arrives, your first thought can no longer be, "What can I buy?" It must become, "What can I own?" That single shift sounds small. It is not small. It redraws the future. Still, owning assets is only the beginning. An asset that never produces spendable movement leaves another lesson unfinished. You need your money to flow, not just exist on paper. Chapter 4. Cash flow and compounding. Paper value can seduce you. It can make you feel secure before security is real. Numbers on a screen rise. An account looks healthier. A property price increases. A business valuation climbs. That can matter, but appreciation alone does not alleviate pressure if your daily life is still funded solely by labor. You need a stream. You need movement. You need cash flow. This is the third wealth principle. Build assets that send money back to you, not someday in a fantasy, not only in a distant liquidation event. You want part of your structure to pay you while you still live inside ordinary days. Cash flow changes psychology. A person living only on earned income feels every interruption sharply. A person with income-producing assets feels a little less exposed each month. It is not just about the money itself. It is about what the money says. It says your survival is no longer tied to a single source. It says your future does not depend entirely on your next act of labor. It says your system has begun to work. Pause here. Freedom rarely arrives as a dramatic event. It arrives as fewer moments of panic. Cash flow can come from many forms: dividends, rent, business profit, royalties, interest, licensing, revenue shares. The exact vehicle matters less than the principle behind it. You are training money to return from the field with more than it left with. That is a very different relationship than simply spending and hoping your paycheck rescues you again. The truth is, a lot of people chase net worth while ignoring liquidity. They become asset-heavy and cash-poor. They own things but still feel squeezed. That is not full control. Control requires breathing room. Cash flow is breathing room repeated. This is where most people stop. They think passive income is a slogan, not a structure. They mock it because they have only seen fake versions sold by loud people. Fair enough, but fake marketers do not make the principle false. They only make it easier to dismiss. Quiet money still exists. Quiet money still matters. Stop again. Do not reject a principle because shallow people speak ill of it. Truth survives bad messengers. The fourth wealth principle sits beside cash flow and turns small decisions into massive consequences. Compounding. Not exciting, not dramatic, not immediate, just relentless. Compounding is what happens when gains are allowed to remain in motion long enough to produce gains on gains. It is mathematics, yes, but it is also character. Because most people do not fail compounding for lack of access. They fail it for lack of patience. They interrupt the process. They withdraw too early. They start and stop. They chase novelty. They trade consistency for excitement. They cannot tolerate slow progress because the culture has trained them to need visible acceleration. But compounding often feels unimpressive at first. That is the test. It asks whether you can stay disciplined while the results still look small. That is where power hides. A person who understands compounding stops disrespecting time. 10 years matter, 20 years matter more. Reinvested returns matter. Regular contributions matter. Avoided mistakes matter. Fees matter. Taxes matter. The order of your decisions matters. Compounding rewards clean behavior and punishes careless friction. Let that settle. Small leaks destroy long horizons. Small disciplines build them. Think about how different life becomes when you accept this. Instead of looking for a single heroic financial move, you start building a chain of repeatable decisions. Spend less than you can. Invest the difference. Reinvest the returns. Protect the base. Increase the contribution as income rises. Leave it alone. That sounds too plain for people addicted to stimulation. Yet plain has built more wealth than drama ever will. The truth is, compounding also works against you when used by debt, inflation, and bad habits. Interest on consumer debt compounds. Lifestyle creep compounds. Poor choices compound. Neglected savings compounds into regret. Time is always multiplying something. If you do not direct it, it will still move. It just may move against you. That insight should sober you. Money is not just about what you earn this month. It is about what your repeated patterns are teaching the next decade to become. That is why financial literacy is so threatening to lazy systems. A person who understands cash flow and compounding becomes difficult to trap with appearances. They no longer ask only whether they can afford the monthly payment. They ask what the payment costs in lost investing years, in reduced optionality, in delayed ownership, in surrendered calm. That question has weight. Once you begin to feel the force of time, you also begin to respect another truth. Wealth grows faster when your effort is not the only thing in the room doing the lifting. You need leverage, and you need it without letting it own you. Chapter 5. Leverage, Ownership, and Protection. Human effort matters, discipline matters, skill matters, but labor alone has limits. There are only so many hours in a day, only so much energy in a body, only so much output one person can produce directly. If wealth depended only on effort, many exhausted people would be rich by now. They are not, because wealth grows fastest when effort is paired with leverage. This is the fifth wealth principle. Use leverage with precision. Leverage means using tools that multiply the effect of your time, money, knowledge, or systems. Capital is leverage. Technology is leverage. Media is leverage. Teams are leverage. Code is leverage. Distribution is leverage. Ownership in productive companies is leverage. You are looking for ways to deliver results that exceed the raw hours you can personally sell. That is how scale enters the room, but leverage has a darker twin. The same force that expands intelligent action can magnify stupidity, vanity, and panic. Borrowed money used carelessly becomes a weapon pointed inward. Team growth without judgment creates chaos. A business expanded without margins amplifies stress. Leverage is not magic. It is multiplication. It makes the underlying pattern louder. Pause here. If your habits are weak, leverage punishes you. If your habits are strong, leverage rewards you. The truth is, many people first gain leverage through debt. Credit cards, car loans, personal loans, easy payment plans, buy now and pay later. They are taught the consuming version before they ever learn the productive version. That alone explains a great deal. When leverage enters life as a way to pull tomorrow into today, it usually leaves tomorrow poorer. When leverage enters life as a way to multiply productive output, it can leave tomorrow stronger. This is where most people stop. They either fear all leverage and stay small forever, or they worship it and get destroyed by it. Both mistakes come from shallow understanding. The real lesson is ownership. This is the sixth wealth principle. Seek equity, not just effort. Equity means you own a part of what grows, not just the wage for maintaining it, not just the fee for touching it. Part of it. Shares, business ownership, profit participation. Intellectual property rights, real economic stake. Ownership allows you to benefit from expansion in a way labor alone never can. Stop again. If you build something valuable and own none of it, you are still close to the cage. If you own part of what grows, time starts working beside you. Think about the emotional shift here. Instead of only asking how much a task pays today, you begin asking whether this move increases ownership tomorrow. A lower immediate reward with long-term equity may be worth more than a higher short-term check with no residual benefit. That is difficult for people trained to optimize only for immediate income. But adulthood with money requires second-order thinking. You must learn to see beyond the first payment. Ownership without protection, though, is still incomplete. That brings the seventh principle into view. Protect the downside. Wealth is not built only by winning. It is built by surviving. Avoid catastrophic mistakes. Avoid concentrated ego bets. Avoid debt loads that erase one bad season. Avoid signing what you do not understand. Avoid pretending optimism is a strategy. Protection sounds cautious because it is, but caution is not weakness. Recklessness is often just insecurity, performing confidence. The truth is, many fortunes are lost, not because the person lacked intelligence, but because success made them feel exempt from basic rules. They overborrow. They overexpand. They stop keeping reserves. They confuse a good period with permanent safety. Then the environment changes and the structure cracks. Protection is how disciplined people remain in the game long enough for their sound decisions to matter. Let that settle. The first rule of wealth is not to look wealthy. The deeper rule is not to die financially from one stupid decision. Margin matters. Liquidity matters. Insurance matters. Diversification matters. Legal structure matters. Emergency reserves matter. Reading before signing matters. Slowing down when everybody is rushing matters. These habits are not glamorous. They are adult. They are the quiet walls that keep one storm from entering every room. Once you understand leverage, ownership, and protection, you stop thinking like a worker who occasionally invests. You begin thinking like a builder who uses labor as one tool among many. That is a deeper identity. But identity is only proven through repetition. Principles do not change a life until they become behavior repeated when nobody is watching. That is the next test. Chapter 6. Patience, Discipline, and Reinvestment. At this point, the mind usually wants something dramatic, a master move, a secret instrument, a hidden shortcut. But the deeper truth is harder for restless people to accept. Wealth is most often built through repetition that looks boring from the outside and feels demanding from the inside. This is the seventh principle in its full form. Reinvest with patience and discipline. When gains appear, do not immediately convert them into a new costume. Do not rush to advertise progress. Feed the structure first. Strengthen the machine before decorating the room. That simple choice separates adults from performers. A person with discipline understands that the early stages of wealth building are fragile. Capital is still small. Mistakes still hurt. Habits are still being tested. This is not the time for victory laps. This is the time for reinforcement. Earnings go back into assets. Surplus strengthens reserves. Skill investment continues. Systems get cleaner. Expenses stay controlled. The outside world may see little. Good. The roots are not supposed to impress the sky. Pause here. What grows slowly often lasts. What shouts early often collapses early. Patience has become rare because nearly every modern signal trains the opposite. Fast answers, fast shipping, fast entertainment, fast comparison, fast envy. Fast spending, slow building feels like invisibility inside that environment. Many people cannot stand it. They need evidence that others can see. They need visible proof that the sacrifice means something, so they interrupt the process to buy relief in the form of an image. This is where most people stop, not because they do not know what to do, but because they cannot tolerate how it looks while it is working. The truth is, discipline is not mainly about force, it is about identity. When you see yourself as someone who protects the future, your choices change. You stop negotiating with every impulse. You stop treating every desire like a command. You stop saying, "I worked hard, so I deserve to leak." Of course you worked hard. That is exactly why leakage should offend you. Stop again. Reward without control becomes self-sabotage. Discipline is self-respect with numbers attached. Reinvestment is how patience turns into outcome. You earn, you keep a portion, you buy productive assets. Those assets produce. You feed the production back into the system. Month after month, year after year, the structure becomes less dependent on any single event. That is how ordinary incomes can produce extraordinary resilience when given enough time and enough consistency. Many people underestimate reinvestment because the first returns look small. Small dividends, small interest, small profits, small growth. That is exactly when discipline matters most. Early gains are seeds, not celebrations. If you keep uprooting the seed to admire it, you never get a tree. That image matters because it forces honesty. Are you trying to build something alive or to feel successful right now? Those are different missions. The first requires endurance. The second requires audience. The truth is, reinvestment also applies to yourself. Money placed into genuine skill can compound. Better communication, better sales ability, better judgment, better technical capacity, better health, better emotional control. If a capability meaningfully improves your future cash flow or decision quality, it may be one of the highest return uses of capital available to you. But again, the standard must be truth. Not ego, not vanity learning, not collecting courses to feel productive. Real skill changes output. Let that settle. A purchased identity is fragile. An earned capability is portable. Patience also protects you from the poison of comparison. Somebody will always appear ahead. Somebody will post more, spend more, show more. Somebody will look richer while being structurally weaker. If you keep turning your head toward every performance, your own plan will lose coherence. Wealth hates scattered attention. It rewards focus. Silence becomes a weapon here. Quiet investing, quiet ownership, quiet reserves, quiet progress, quiet refusal. You do not need to explain to people why you are not spending like them. Explanations are often just permission-seeking in formal language. Your life does not need unanimous approval to become strong, and strength is the point. Not applause, not lifestyle inflation masquerading as success. Strength, the ability to absorb shocks, the ability to choose work instead of cling to it, the ability to say no, the ability to walk away from manipulation, the ability to rest without terror. That is what patience buys over time. Not just more money, more command. Still, command does not come from theory alone. A principle only becomes real when it enters calendars, bank accounts, contracts, routines, and quiet habits that run even on ordinary Tuesdays. That is where the work becomes visible to no one but you. Chapter 7. Quiet Systems. By now, you know enough to ruin your old excuses. The concepts are clear. The principles are on the table. The remaining question is sharper. How do you make this real when life is busy, pressure is constant, and emotion still shows up every month, disguised as urgency? The answer is systems. Quiet systems, not moods, not speeches, not occasional bursts of motivation. Systems are what carry your standards when your energy drops. If you want to build wealth quietly, then your financial life must stop depending on how inspired you feel after hearing hard truths. Inspiration is cheap, structure is costly in the beginning, and priceless later. Start with the obvious. Money must be directed before it is touched. If income lands in your account with no predefined assignments, the world will assign it for you. Convenience will take some, habit will take some, emotion will take some, status will take some. What remains will look too small to matter, and that lie will repeat for years. Pause here. Unplanned money becomes public property for every impulse around you. Planned money begins to obey. A quiet system means automatic saving, automatic investing, automatic transfers into reserves, bills organized, debt addressed with precision, spending categories visible, recurring costs questioned. The goal is not obsession. The goal is to reduce friction for good behavior and increase it for bad behavior. Make the right move easier. Make the wrong move slower. That may sound mechanical. Good. Wealth building should be less emotional than most people make it. Emotion has its place. It does not belong in every purchase. This is where most people stop. They say they know what to do, but they never design an environment that supports doing it. They rely on memory. They rely on willpower. They rely on end-of-month leftovers. Leftovers almost never build a future. Stop again. If your plan depends on what is left, you do not have a plan. You have hope wearing a spreadsheet. A quiet system also means living below your means without broadcasting that fact as suffering. There is no medal for performative minimalism. The point is not to look humble. The point is to remain dangerous. Dangerous means your expenses are low enough to give you options. Dangerous means an employer cannot buy your silence cheaply. Dangerous means a bad month does not force a bad decision. Dangerous means you can see opportunities that panic would have hidden. That kind of life does not require deprivation. It requires selectiveness. Spend on what genuinely supports life, health, ability, or meaning. Cut what exists mainly to signal. Every dollar not wasted becomes a vote for future control. The truth is, many people fear systems because systems reveal truth. They show where money actually goes. They show how much of your spending is emotional. They show how many subscriptions, habits, conveniences, and image purchases have become normalized. That can sting. Good. A clean sting is better than a long bleed. Let that settle. You do not need more money to start acting like a person who keeps money. You need more honesty. Quiet systems extend beyond accounts. They enter your social life. Who influences your spending? Who normalizes debt? Who pressures display? Who mocks restraint? Who treats planning like fear? People shape behavior more than most admit. If your circle worships image, you will fight harder to keep clarity. If your circle respects discipline, your standards will breathe easier. Then there is the calendar. Wealth grows where attention goes repeatedly. Time spent scrolling envy is time not spent reviewing numbers. Time spent recovering from avoidable chaos is time not spent building skill. A quiet system protects time because time is upstream from money. Waste enough time and financial weakness follows. You do not need a perfect setup. You need a repeatable one. Monthly reviews, clear targets, contributions that happen without negotiation, rules for large purchases, rules for debt, rules for windfalls, rules for raises. If income increases and spending rises in tandem, you are still untrained. A raise should strengthen the structure before it softens the lifestyle. The truth is, boring rules create exciting freedom later. And once your systems are in place, another opportunity opens. You stop merely protecting income and start expanding your ability to create value beyond the limits of a single job. Chapter 8. Building Beyond the Paycheck. Protection matters. Control matters. Systems matter. But if all your structure does is preserve what already exists, growth stays narrow. At some point, you must widen your field. You must increase the ways value can flow through your life without increasing your dependence on a single employer, role, or fragile stream. That does not mean reckless side hustles or chasing every trend. It means strategic expansion. You study where your current skill can scale. You study what you can own. You study what you can build once and benefit from more than once. This starts with a hard truth. A paycheck is often compensation for usefulness inside someone else's system. That is not wrong. But if you stop there, all of your upside remains negotiated by others. Your salary rises by permission. Your hours are bounded. Your role can change. Your position can vanish. You may be talented, yet structurally limited. Pause here. Talent without leverage earns. Talent with leverage builds. So you ask better questions. Can this skill become consulting? Can this knowledge become a product? Can this experience become content, teaching, software, licensing, advisory work, equity participation, a small business, or an ownership stake in something productive? Can this network create opportunities that are invisible on a resume? Can this capital buy time to build a second engine? The truth is, you do not need 10 income streams. You need one primary stream handled well, a growing asset base, and a deliberate search for leverage where your strengths already live. Noise comes from trying to do everything. Power comes from building what fits. This is where most people stop. They confuse expansion with frenzy. They start 5-week projects, learn none deeply, and call the exhaustion ambition. That is not ambition. That is scattered fear. Real builders pick a lane that has economic weight and stay with it long enough to become difficult to replace. Stop again. Depth creates pricing power. Scarcity follows competence. Building beyond the paycheck also means negotiating with more self-respect. If your financial structure is clean, you negotiate differently. You are less desperate. You can wait. You can ask. You can walk. Desperation is expensive. It makes people underprice themselves, accept poor conditions, and cling to environments that drain both their money and their minds. The stronger your reserves, the stronger your voice. There is also a deeper layer. Many people have been so conditioned to seek safety inside systems that they never test their own capacity to create outside them. They assume entrepreneurship is for a special type of person. They assume ownership requires charisma or luck. Sometimes it requires those. More often it requires observation, discipline, consistency, and the willingness to solve real problems without needing immediate applause. A small service business can be a wealth engine. A niche expertise can be a wealth engine. A digital product can be a wealth engine. A carefully chosen investment can be a wealth engine. A skill paired with distribution can be a wealth engine. The form changes, the principle stays. Build things that separate income from the constant sale of your hours. Let that settle. If you stop working for a week and all money stops, the structure is still shallow. That is not failure, it is feedback. Expanding beyond the paycheck must still respect the earlier principles. Do not build a second trap that looks entrepreneurial. Do not chase vanity businesses with no margin. Do not borrow aggressively to fund ego. Do not confuse activity with traction. Cash flow matters, ownership matters, protection matters, patience matters. A bigger field does not excuse weak discipline. The truth is, the strongest builders are often calm because their eyes stay on fundamentals. Does this create value? Can it scale? Can it be owned? Can it survive? Can it be repeated? If the answer is no, the excitement does not matter. Eventually, as your income sources diversify and your assets deepen, the external part of the game becomes less difficult than the internal one. Because even with a solid structure, many people still sabotage themselves through fear, envy, guilt, status pressure, and emotional volatility around money. That is the battle most people never admit out loud. Chapter 9. Emotional control around money. Money exposes what pressure has been hiding. It reveals impatience. It reveals insecurity. It reveals the need to impress. It reveals fear of missing out, fear of being left behind, fear of being judged, fear of saying no. That is why financial skill without emotional control often breaks down. Knowledge can tell you what to do. Emotion can still stop you from doing it. This matters more than most people realize. Plenty of intelligent people know the basics. Save, invest, avoid bad debt, build reserves, own assets. Yet they still overspend, panic sell, compare, hide problems, or self-sabotage the moment life becomes socially uncomfortable. The issue is not information. The issue is control. Pause here. If your emotions can move your money at will, you do not own your money. Your emotions do. The truth is, spending is often social before it is financial. You buy to belong. You buy to recover. You buy to announce. You buy to numb. You buy because someone else seems ahead. You buy because saying no makes you feel small. You buy because the future is abstract and the hit of relief is immediate. Once you understand that, your budget stops being only arithmetic. It becomes psychology made visible. This is where most people stop. They keep treating money mistakes like math errors when the real cause is emotional leakage. That is why rules matter so much. Rules reduce the number of moments where mood gets voting power. Stop again. Clarity before the purchase. Calm before the signature. Silence before the reaction. Emotional control also matters on the upside. When money starts working, ego wakes up. A few good months, a strong market, a profitable deal, a raise, a bonus, a business gain. Suddenly restraint feels unnecessary. Success whispers that the rules were only for harder seasons. That is how people erase progress. They start confusing momentum with mastery. They loosen standards right when standards created the result. Do not do that. A steady mind is part of wealth. The ability to stay measured when numbers rise. The ability to stay measured when numbers fall. The ability to avoid making identity out of either. If the market rises and you feel invincible, you are in danger. If the market falls and you feel doomed, you are in danger. Both reactions make your decisions smaller than they need to be. The truth is, money responds well to boring minds. Minds that can delay response, minds that can read, minds that can wait, minds that do not need to prove anything in public. Emotional drama is expensive. Let that settle. The loudest financial decisions are often compensation for quiet insecurity. Control has a quieter voice. Then there is guilt. Many people were raised around financial strain, shame, or confusion. Part of them feels disloyal, becoming more disciplined than the environment that shaped them. Part of them feels wrong charging more, saying no, leaving, investing, or choosing differently. That guilt can keep a person trapped in old patterns long after they understand better ones. You need to face that honestly. Respect for your past does not require surrender to it. Compassion for others does not require self-destruction. Helping people is noble. Bleeding your structure dry to perform generosity is not noble. It is unstable, and unstable people cannot help much for long. Relationships test emotional control too. If someone feels threatened by your boundaries, your restraint, your plan, your refusal to perform wealth, that tension will surface. Some will call you cheap when you are being strategic. Some will call you lucky when you are being disciplined. Some will call you distant when you are simply no longer available to engage in mutual self-sabotage. That discomfort is part of the price. The truth is, a calm financial life often requires disappointing people who benefited from your lack of control. Let that sentence land. It explains more than most advice ever will. Once you master that layer, something profound happens. Money stops feeling like a stage where you are constantly being judged. It becomes a field of choices, cleaner choices, quieter choices, more deliberate choices. And from that place, a new identity begins to take shape. Not someone rich-looking, someone who knows. Chapter 10. The identity of someone who knows. At the end of all this, wealth is still not mainly a number. Numbers matter, structure matters, assets matter, cash flow matters, but beneath all of it sits identity. The identity of someone who knows how money really works and refuses to live by the old script again. This person is not mystical. This person is not flashy. This person does not need to posture. The difference appears in quiet decisions, in what gets ignored, in what gets funded, in what gets questioned, in what gets protected, in what gets delayed, in what gets owned, in what gets refused without apology. That person can be you, if the old identity is allowed to die. The old identity waited for permission. It wanted approval before action. It equated income with security. It treated spending like relief and debt like access. It admired appearances too easily. It outsourced thinking to institutions and culture. It called confusion normal because confusion was common. Common is not safe. Normal is not wise. The identity of someone who knows is calmer because it is less dependent, not fully independent. That word is often exaggerated, but less dependent, less emotionally exposed, less likely to panic at every market swing, every opinion, every invitation to spend. This person has studied the machinery enough to stop being hypnotized by the paint on the walls. The truth is, knowing changes your posture before it changes your lifestyle. You walk differently when you understand that every dollar can either serve you or weaken you. You hear conversations differently. You read contracts differently. You measure risk differently. You notice how often society glorifies the exact behaviors that keep people financially fragile. This is where most people stop. They want new results without letting their self-concept change. But if you still see yourself as a consumer first, an earner only, a person who deserves every impulse because life is hard, then new tactics will be swallowed by old identity. You do not rise to your financial intentions. You fall to your financial identity. So what does the new identity actually do? It earns with discipline and without worshipping the paycheck. It saves before spending because future control matters more than present display. It buys assets before image. It seeks cash flow, respects compounding, uses leverage carefully, values ownership, and protects the downside. It reinvests when ego wants to celebrate too early. It builds systems so standards survive tired days. It expands beyond one source of income without chasing noise. It controls emotion so fear and envy do not seize the wheel. Most of all, it stays quiet, not secretive from shame, quiet from strength. Quiet because not every move needs witness. Quiet because performance drains focus. Quiet because wealth spoken too early often gets spent socially before it matures financially. Quiet because silence protects concentration. Let that settle. Some people talk about the life they are building. Some people build a life that no longer needs explaining. The classroom never trained this identity because this identity is harder to herd. It thinks in decades. It questions incentives. It understands ownership. It sees that money is not a toy or a taboo. It is a force. Mishandled, it becomes anxiety. Directed, it becomes space. Directed well over time, it becomes power, with less noise attached. That is what you were not taught. Not because it was too hard, because it was too liberating. Now you know the gap. You know the cage. You know the principles. You know the systems. You know the emotional battle. You know the posture required. The remaining issue is not knowledge. It is choice. You can return to the old script if you want. Many do. They hear truth, feel the sting, then resume the pattern because the pattern is familiar. Familiar can feel safer than freedom in the beginning. But safety built on dependence is brittle. Freedom built on discipline is slower and far more real. The truth is, your financial life changes the moment you stop asking how to look successful and start asking how to become structurally strong. That question reorders everything. It changes what you admire. It changes what you tolerate. It changes how you work, spend, save, invest, speak, and wait. And over time, it changes what kind of person stands in the mirror. Not a person chasing money, a person directing it. Not a person desperate for more, a person exact with what arrives. Not a person trained only to serve the system, a person who finally understands the system well enough to step outside its script and remain standing there in full control. You were not undereducated by mistake. The missing lesson was the most expensive lesson. Money obeys structure, not hope. A paycheck can feed your life and still never free it. The first sign of strength is what you stop buying. An asset is a worker you own. Debt sells urgency to people who never learned patience. Cash flow is calm repeated. Compounding rewards the person who can stay still. Leverage magnifies what is already true in you. Ownership changes the conversation with time. Protection is not fear, it is maturity. Silence keeps the plan alive. Discipline is how future peace gets funded. Most people spend an hour feeling powerful. A few people build power that lasts for decades. Control is worth more than display. What you keep matters more than what you announce. The world trains consumption loudly and ownership quietly. This is where most people stop. The truth is, stopping early has a price. A strong financial life is built in private first. Money is stored choice. Wealth is stored control. Now you know.